Hello, friends, and welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. I'm Andrew Lazaga.
And I'm Dubside.
Before we start today's Dubcast, I want to let people know that I'll be releasing a short video that was included in your documentary, Modern Greenland Kayaking, as one of the special features on the DVD.
Yeah, I forgot about that extra little piece there, but it's a nice little part. It tells you how to use the Greenland paddle, the forward stroke. George Grunseth is in there. I'm assuming everybody remembers George Grunseth from episode number 2, just the last one. And also Greg Stamer is in there. Greg Stamer is another big name in Greenland-style paddling in this country. He goes way, way back. And he was the first president of Kayak USA, president for quite some time. The current president is Helen Wilson, and we will meet Helen Wilson in this episode.
I remember years ago when Greg Stamer was doing a circumnavigation of Iceland solo.
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive, pretty exciting to follow. He was covering 30 miles a day and was using a Greenland paddle. So that video will be on my YouTube channel, and I'll also put the link in the show notes. Okay, so let's get on with Dubcast number 3.
All right.
Welcome to the Dubcast with Dubside. This is Dubcast number 3. In this episode, I will tell you about rolling a kayak, and a few things about learning and teaching how to roll a kayak. I'll tell you about a woman named Helen Wilson, and we will have some new Greenlandic music. The voyage will last for approximately half an hour. Thanks for coming on board. I was in Arcata, California, on the Pacific coast, walking on a jetty next to an inlet on a rather windy day. And the Coast Guard was out there practicing. They had about a 30, 40-foot vessel with an enclosed bridge and a deck above and behind the bridge with about 6 or 7 guys on it with their orange survival suits and helmets. And they were practicing going into the breaking surf. And there was maybe between 5 and 10 foot waves coming in breaking. And they would head right into them, and the bow would go flying up in the air, and they'd come crashing back down. The guys would get all drenched, and then they'd wait for the next wave to come. It was educational to see what it's like on the high seas and the really rough stuff. If the captain doesn't keep the bow pointed straight into the oncoming waves, a broadside hit is likely to flip the boat right upside down. I was told that this particular Coast Guard vessel could handle being flipped upside down and coming back up. I suppose it had the proper seals for the air, engine intake, and the electronics to survive that. But they would have to take it in for service and inspection after that to make sure the boat was all back to normal again. And that cost several thousands of dollars, so they didn't practice that maneuver very often. For most everything else on the water, flipping upside down is, at best, a bad day, or in the case of supertankers or cruise ships, it's an utter disaster. But unique among watercraft, we have the kayak. A kayak can be knocked upside down and in seconds come back up fully recovered and ready to keep on going. It does require that one competently learns the technique of rolling. Now, kayaks were developed and invented so far back in history that we have no written record of their early periods. Archaeologically speaking, it was over 1,000 years ago. It'd be fascinating if we could find out exactly under what circumstances, who, how, and when this first ever roll was done. It must have been a heck of an achievement for that man, woman, or kid, or whoever first got it to work. And while we've lost that information to history, I can still feel some sort of connection to that early first roller. I felt it the first time I got my roll to work. And it didn't come easy for me. It took, over the course of many months, a lot of effort. But when I first came up, first got that roll to work, and I knew I did it by myself because there was nobody next to me, next to the kayak, I came up out of the water and I was like, whoa, I did it. I'm looking for the standing ovation. It was like I just climbed Mount Everest. Well, you can learn to roll, or you can learn to roll and get bitten by the rolling bug. And then you become a ROLL-A-HOLIC. And I'll have to confess that that's what happened to me. Because after the first roll, you soon discover that there are many, many more rolls. There are rolls that are continuing to evolve, and people are making up new ones all the time. And there's always something more to learn. When I learned to roll on the left side as well as the right side, and when I learned how to roll with just one hand on the paddle, and when I learned how to roll with only my hands, those were all good. But nothing was quite like getting that first roll. That was the real magic moment for me. And I found that I can sort of get back to that feeling by teaching other people to roll, which I've done for many years now. And when you get that person, the beginner, getting their first roll with your help, then I get to share in the moment, and I see that little gleam in their eye, and I can feel again, yes, got it, got that roll. It's a great feeling. At the time I learned how to roll, and it's still true today, the highest level of rolling occurs at the Greenland National Kayak Championships. It's an event that takes place in Greenland every year, usually in the summer. And a year or two into my rolling addiction, I set my sights on going to Greenland and competing in the national competition. They have a list of 35 different rolling maneuvers that you have to do under a time limitation. And I had studied these maneuvers and learned as many as I could and kept working on them. But I knew that the water in Greenland is cold. I mean, this is the Arctic we're dealing with, right? And there's icebergs floating right past you, so that water is cold. I'll tell you what it's like to practice for the competition. Each roll is done on both the left and the right side, so that's a total of 70 maneuvers if you can do them all, and you have a 30-minute time limit. I would go out in the wintertime with the air temperature in the 30s, water temperature 32, and it'd be all bundled up. The first roll, I'd go down and come up, and it didn't feel that bad. Felt like, yeah, I got this. I can do this. Not a problem. Second roll, with the wet surfaces that are damp now, the water's got a head start on getting into your skin, and the second roll feels pretty cold. The third roll feels really cold. At that point, I would usually be thinking, I don't think today I want to do this. This is too cold for me. But if I pushed past that and just kept on going, on the list, by the time you get to say IKIONIARPINGA, which is the spinal, roll number 7 on the list, so that would be 14 times you've had your head down in the water so far. At that point, my hands and face have started to go numb, and I can't feel it. And if I keep on going then, I'm good to go. It's not a problem at all until about, you get past the hand rolls up in the final stuff. That's about 20, 25 minutes, depending on how fast you go. And then the cold starts to penetrate whatever insulation you have under a dry suit, say, and your whole body's getting cold, and then you might start shivering. Then it's time to stop. But so if you can get past that second or third roll and keep pushing through that, you pretty much can keep on going till your half hour is up. But incidentally, I would always use the Greenland Rolling, which is covering my head and tight around my face, because keeping the cold water out of your ears is very important. You do not want to get ice cold water in your ears. That's that has a number of bad and undesirable outcomes. In the space of a few years, I rose up through the ranks of rolling enthusiasts. I was taking classes with instructors. We had a bunch of their special tricks they would show at the end of a class. And when it became pretty apparent that I was well on my way towards figuring out all these tricks, I had one instructor said, "You know, you're not supposed to get all these." But sooner or later, I had worked out how to do all these things, and they had nothing left to show me. And pretty soon I was replacing them at rolling demonstrations for festivals and weekend events. In traditional kayaking circles in this country, anybody who shows some talent and aptitude is pulled into the pool of instructors and asked to help with the teaching. We've tried to make that a component of the traditional paddling community in this country. You take the skills that you've been taught and you're expected to pass them on, teach them to others. And in that way, the culture is perpetuated. Well, thinking back over my many years of teaching rolling, I think when I first started to do it, was encouraged to do it, I learned rolls much faster after I got the first one than I took to teaching rolling. And I cringe to recalling some of the bad experiences of just trying, not really understanding how to convey a physical skill to someone else. And it was more thinking like, well, I can do this, just do it. Just go like this. Come on, just do it. How come you can't do it? It was completely the wrong approach. And I still feel bad about there's certain people, faces I remember from way back that I was not able to get them to get anything going on in terms of the roller going, and never saw them again. And I'm still to this day afraid that they got alienated from the whole kayaking or the whole rolling thing and just gave up on it completely. And myself to blame for that. But I would hope that I've somehow compensated for that by having positive experiences with hundreds of people over the years. And maybe that's made up for it somehow. But if I run into those early people again someday, I would be so happy to spend as much time as possible, as much time as necessary to make up for my mistakes back in the day. I think it was the first or second time I was put in a position to teach rolling. It was in Philadelphia at this pool, the pool I first learned to roll at. And two people, man and woman, showed up and they each had feathercraft kayaks that they had just got. And so they people running the pool sessions saw feathercraft, folding kayaks. Dubside knows about folding kayaks, so we'll put Dubside with them. So I got them in the water, and common mistake is just to pull the paddle down. You get upside down, and the kayak stops turning, and then you just pull the paddle down, trying to pull your way back up. And all I could say to them, I saw that the paddle wasn't, sweeping along the top of the water. And I said, you have to sweep your paddle along the surface more. And knowing now that when you're upside down, that makes no sense to most people. Like, they don't know exactly where the surface or how to sweep the paddle. It's just, it's just completely incomprehensible to say, sweep your paddle along the surface of the water. It's just too disorienting as it is. So nowadays, what I say is, don't bend that elbow. And I'd put my hand right on the elbow. I said, keep this elbow straight to start out. As you move the kayak, don't bend that elbow. And if you keep the elbow straight, but move the paddle, you can't help but push the paddle away from the kayak to start the sweep, which is what I want them to do. Those two people I have never seen again in the intervening 20 years, but I certainly hope they didn't give up kayaking. Maybe they didn't take to rolling, but I hope they continued to enjoy their kayaks for many years. After my first time competing in Greenland, which I'll tell you about in detail in the future, I had the opportunity to move out to the West Coast to the Seattle area and make some DVDs, instructional DVDs, which I did. I was making the rounds at the Kayak USA events, QAJAQ USA, traditional kayak events in the U.S. There's one in the Seattle area that takes place in June, which is called STIX for short, which stands for the South Sound Traditional Inuit Kayak Symposium. I was there one year and was helping with the instruction, and as various students with various, skill levels come. And one student had the Tempest. Tempest is a plastic kayak made by Wilderness Systems, which is a good sea kayak. It's not the rolling machine like some of the more low volume Greenland style ones, but a decent kayak. And I had a student who could do quite a number of the rolls, but did not a forward hand roll, which is a little bit of a tricky operation. Asamik masikut, it's called. So you're rolling with your hand and ending on the front deck, and felt that it wasn't possible to do that in a Wilderness Systems Tempest, but there were other kayaks that would work. And I said, "Oh yeah, let me see your kayak." Got in the kayak, got it to work, no problem. So if I can't teach you right away, I can at least show you what it looks like. So I took that excuse away from them. And so the way I described earlier how I would take classes from instructors who quickly ran out of things they could show me, well, somebody did it to me. And the person I'm describing here with the Tempest was Helen Wilson. And she, in short order, was able to do anything I could do, and even do some things better. Helen, at this point, has been to Greenland a number of times and has more than one instructional DVD to her name. She is from Arcata, California, and is actually the person who took me out on the shore that time to watch the Coast Guard vessels practicing in the rough seas. I'll give you an example of Helen's superior teaching techniques. There's a maneuver called the balance brace or static brace. The Greenlandic term is nalasalnuk. And this is where you lay out on your side in the water, face up, and just float, holding your hand out on the paddle. And I might take somebody in their kayak and have them lean out to the side, and I would say, I want you to lean out as far as you can, arch your back, tilt your head up, don't tense up your shoulders, and just float peacefully on the water there. Now, there's a phenomenon in kayaking, particularly if you go upside down to learn how to roll, that you really can't think of more than one thing at a time, particularly when you're nervous and concerned about being able to breathe. So what I just said there, the person they've forgotten the first thing I said and probably the second thing I've said, and by the time they're nervous and out there on the water, they've forgotten everything I've said, and all they're doing is reacting instinctively, and it doesn't work. Well, Helen, she'll get somebody out in the water like that, and she'll say, I want you to put your eyebrows in the water. That's all she says. And that single phrase conveys everything I said before that. I want you to arch your back, tilt your head back, don't tense up, relax, don't tense your shoulders. All those things are conveyed if you just put your eyebrows in the water. And that is very effective teaching. Well, I can't speak for all rolling instructors, but speaking for myself, I find good ideas and steal them from other people all the time. So my video, which came out in 2006, that's quite some time ago, there are things in that video that I think at this point have been surpassed and that I don't use anymore because the state of the art has risen beyond that. I'm not saying my video is obsolete, but I'm just saying that you may find other things that are more effective at this point. And due to the fact that DVDs seem to be going the way of the cassette tape, I've had Andrew has posted that my first rolling DVD, Greenland Rolling with Dubside, online, and you can see it for absolutely free. I think it was called Greenland Rolling with Dubside Volume 1. There actually never was a Volume 2 after that. There's other I did a rolling DVD with Maligiaq, which has a volume 1 and 2. But anyway, the first one, Greenland Rolling with Dubside, is yours to watch for free. I'll let Andrew tell you exactly where to find it at the end of this Dubcast. Maybe the best part of that video is right at the beginning. In the first 30 seconds, that's where I say the water is your friend. But another thing I say in there, and I often mention this when I'm doing a class, I say if there's one secret technique, one key to learning all the hardest rolls and being a master of all the rolling different maneuvers, the one thing, in one word it can be described, and I'll give people a moment to ponder, what could that one thing be? Is it, persistence or something? I said, no. The one secret technique, it's not a secret anymore, but the one technique to learning all the hardest rolls is yoga. You need to be very flexible and have good body awareness to do all those maneuvers. And so, Helen Wilson, by the way, is an incredibly flexible person, and she's also gotten yoga certified as a certified yoga instructor. There's another woman I'll be telling you about in future Dubcasts named Sherry Perry, who has also been to Greenland several times and is also a yoga instructor. The way I phrase it in my video is, you can't go wrong taking up yoga to be a better paddler. And that's still very true, I think. I've been going to Greenland since 2004 on a regular basis. And from when I first went there, I discovered a thriving music scene. And every year I go, I buy more CDs. I have a collection of probably 100 Greenlandic CDs, and there is some really good stuff in there. And I am making it my mission as part of this Dubcast to have this music heard and appreciated beyond the borders of Greenland. There are musicians in Greenland performing and recording in a wide variety of genres, including rap, reggae, folk, blues, rock, and traditional forms of Greenlandic music. Now, I could just play you some of it right now. I've got the CDs right here. But I am not going to do that. Let me explain something about how tough it is for a musician in Greenland. Here in the United States, if you can get 0.5% of the population to buy your music, that is more than a platinum record, 1 million copies sold. Correspondingly, in Greenland, if you can get 0.5% of the population of the country to buy your music, you have sold 300 records. Obviously, that is not going to pay the bills. Therefore, I am going to make my own versions of some of the best music from Greenland and play that for you in hopes that you will be inspired to purchase the original recordings, and in doing so, support these fine musicians. There are some vocalists in Greenland who have attempted to expand their market by singing all their lyrics in English, but to my knowledge, none of them have ever been successful in breaking into the U.S. charts, at least not yet. I'll be focusing on those who sing in Greenlandic because I think it's such an awesome language. Today we have a song by a woman named Stinne Jacobsen, and this was a CD released, I think, about 2005. Title is Nittaallat, Nittaallat. See, I told you Greenlandic was a cool language. Nittaallat. That means snowflakes. So Stinne bears a direct connection to kayaking. She actually competed in the kayak competition as a teenager in the late 1990s. And she, I think, last competed the year 2000. And her brother, whose name is Mikael Jacobsen, was one of the top racers. He was known to be as fast and sometimes faster than a young, very talented kayaker named Maligiaq Padilla. I talked to Mikael in 2011, and he said that Stinne had was living in Denmark, had a family, kids to raise, and had sort of moved on from music, as a lot of Greenlandic musicians have to do. Fortunately, we still have the recordings. This song is called IKIONIARPINGA, and that translates to "Will You Help Me?" And I'll give you, this is kind of a loneliness theme. First verse says, "The sky is getting darker, the clouds are moving in, I sense the wind and I feel lonely." And the chorus says, "Will you help me by listening to me? I want you to be nearer. I would like that you stay." I'll have to say that the translating Greenland to English is not an exact science. There's a lot of leeway the translator has, because the whole grammatical structure of Greenlandic is different from English. So you don't always get the exact meaning. And when you get into poetic verses and things, it can get all sorts of differences between the actual what was intended to mean and the technical translation. But so just bear that in mind. Okay, without further ado, this is a song by Stinne Jacobsen, which translates to "Will You Help Me?" The Greenlandic title is IKIONIARPINGA.
Kilapta silenera Nuisata kutilenerat Hanori malugara Kiseçli yaştungar Üffi saka figine pinga Üffimi tasio fimi Ikiyu savama Ganga kuşluğu IKIONIARPINGA Jusana şunga Kanilati kusupagit Manigi narishuni Nuisata khimata Anarip kisalatu bomanga Kamachip kingo manga Kingo mut aparivagit IKIONIARPINGA Jusana shunga Kanilati kusupagit Manigi narishuni IKIONIARPINGA Jusana shunga Kanilati kusupagit Manigi narishuni IKIONIARPINGA Jusana shunga Kanilati kusupagit Maligiaq narishuni IKIONIARPINGA Jusana shunga
Now, you're going to have to bear in mind that she sings it a good deal better than that. And the arrangement is a good deal better than that. But in order for you to hear it, you are going to need to go to atlanticmusic.gl. That's GL for Greenland. atlanticmusic.gl. And look for Stinne Jacobsen. Now, we would pronounce that Jacobsen, Jacobsen, but it's Stinne Jacobsen. And the CD is entitled Nittaslat, Nittaallat. And this is song number 4 on the CD, IKIONIARPINGA. If you keep following future Dubcasts, there's more interesting Greenlandic music where that came from. And that'll do it for me. Andrew, it's all yours.
Be sure to check out the show notes for links to the Greenland Paddle Forward Stroke video with Greg Stamer and George Gronseth, Kayak USA, the South Sound Traditional Inuit Kayak Symposium, Helen Wilson's website, and Stinne Jacobsen's music, available through atlanticmusic.gl, as well as IKIONIARPINGA, available through digital download through Amazon. If you enjoyed this podcast, let us know what you think and drop us an email at dubcastwithdubside.com. Also, consider helping support the Dubcast with Dubside through Patreon. You can also donate directly using PayPal to our email address, dubcastwithdubside@gmail.com.